Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers on this channel by the end of the playoffs, so your subscription will be much appreciated. Also drop a like on this video, it only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. If you are wondering where my reaction to the James Harden trade is, that is over on my main channel, so go check that out if you have not already. If you're new from the main channel, because I gave it kind of a big shout out in the Harden video, what's up? We're going to talk about the Kristaps Porzingis trade, which in terms of names, if I'm not mistaken, is this the next? No. CJ's probably in a similar tier to KP, and then Tyrese Halliburton, even though he's probably worse than both of those guys right now, was a bigger name, and then Sabonis is definitely better than Porzingis. There's been a lot of big names this trade deadline now that I'm saying it. Anyways, and then Ben Simmons is a part of the Harden trade. Where was I going with this? The Porzingis trade was kind of big, because Porzingis is pretty good, even though the thought on him as a player has gone back and forth over time. I was really down bad this last offseason to the point where people would have said this trade to happen now is good, and then now they're not, because he's been good this year outside of the fact that he's shooting really bad from three. This trade makes no sense. It makes no sense to anybody. It makes no sense on both sides of the equation, really. One side more so than the other, because at least in the case of the Wizards, you can say at least Porzingis is better than what you traded, so you did get better if that's your goal, but it's kind of unconclusive what exactly their goal is. Although now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to talk about this other trade more in depth on another video, but they also traded PJ Washington for Montrezl Harrell, or the Wizards got PJ Washington, and now it actually makes sense because they got Montrezl Harrell out of there so that Porzingis can play center. So maybe it actually does make more sense than I was giving it credit for, but also you have Kyle Kuzma there who's going to want to play power forward primarily, so I don't know. The Wizards continue to perplex me. It makes a little bit more sense now that I take into account the Montrezl Harrell trade, but either way, the Wizards still, I feel like they should be rebuilding, and they're just not. So there's that. Dallas. What's going on? What was the thinking here? What was the game plan here? So if you aren't aware, the trade package, Spencer Dinwiddie, Davis Bertans, and the Mavs in this move traded their second-round pick. So they gave them Porzingis and a second-round pick for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. Now, if Spencer Dinwiddie was Spencer Dinwiddie from like a year or two ago, whenever he was last healthy before this season, wouldn't be the worst trade in the world. I would still say it's a bad trade, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Especially if this is also Davis Bertans of like 2 years ago. However, that's not the case. Spencer Dinwiddie, if you are not aware, has been fucking awful this year. Just straight up horrible. And he has been maybe the worst signing of this entire offseason. It's gone kind of under the radar, but he's making 18 mil this year, and then the next year, and then the next year after that. I think the third year might not be fully guaranteed, so maybe not. But a lot of fucking money for him to be averaging 12 points and 6 assists on 37% from the field and 31% from three. Last year with Brooklyn, he had an injury. I don't know if it was an ACL or an Achilles or something like that, but it really hindered his numbers when the season prior he was a 20-7 guard. The season before that, he was a 17-5 guard. Season before that, he was a 13-7 guard. Spencer Dinwiddie was pretty good, and then he got a severe injury, and he has not been good, especially on the Wizards. Some people have argued that it's been the situation with the Wizards with the fact that he's with another guard that has relatively hindered him, because he's actually played pretty good when he hasn't been paired with Bradley Beal. However, if that's the argument you're making, he has to play with Luka Doncic, and even when he's not playing with Luka Doncic, the one good thing the Mavericks did this deadline was not trade Jalen Brunson, so he's going to play. There's not a chance he's going to be in the rotation at any point where those two are not on the floor, other than garbage time when they realize he's horrible and shouldn't be in the rotation. So if you want to argue he needs to be in a situation where he can be a lead guard, first of all, Spencer Dinwiddie's not good enough to justify him being your lead guard in just about any circumstance. But second of all, that's not the situation in Dallas, to say the least. They have two ball handling players who are better than Spencer Dinwiddie, and that is going to hinder Spencer quite a bit in terms of him doing what he can do when he was without Bradley Beal, for example. So not a good player there. And then Davis Bertans has been a shooter that can't shoot with some of the worst shot selection you will ever see. Now, I would not be surprised if his three-point percentage was not complete ass. Okay, so last year he shot 40% from three on 7 attempts. And this year, he's shooting 32% on 4 attempts, and that's over 34 games. Granted, he's only getting 15 minutes a game. I can see a world where he goes back to being a pretty damn good three-point shooter. I don't think this dip has been like a huge hindrance, but he takes a lot of really bad shots, and really, he could be like 45+% from three if he just cut out like 2 of his attempts per game, where he's like doing a fadeaway from 5 feet behind the line. And then on top of that, he's an atrocious defender, and he doesn't really bring much to the table scoring-wise outside of the three-point shooting. But if he could go back to being 40% on like 6 attempts per game, getting like 25 minutes a game, that'd be a cool enough player, I suppose. If Spencer Dinwiddie, in the most ideal version, becomes a 6-man and like his efficiency goes up and he's like 12-4 on good efficiency, it's not as though it's necessarily like you got 2 scrubs here. You very well could have, but I think it's within the realm of possibility that both of them end up being okay, especially Bertans. But Porzingis was better, to put it that way. And the one thing that would have justified this trade, in fact, I wouldn't even say justified, it would have made it a good trade, is if it made sense contractually. Because Porzingis, even though he's been good this year, he's been much better defensively than he's ever been. His scoring, again, his 3 ball's not dropping, but other than that, his scoring has been fine. Jason Kidd's offensive system has allowed him to be more active in terms of cutting and stuff like that. But even that being the case, we would all agree that Porzingis making $35 million is an overpay. However, Davis Bertans' contract goes until 2025. And then it might not be fully guaranteed on Spencer's last year, but I'm just going to take the assumption that it is until I see otherwise. Where is show salaries basketball reference? Come on. Davis was 2026, I believe it said. In the case of Dinwiddie, his contract goes until 2024. Meanwhile, Kristaps Porzingis, his contract goes until 2024. And that's with him assuming he's picking up his player option, which he's going to do. So you're getting the same amount of years with Spencer Dinwiddie, except his contract, again, in the last year, if it's fully guaranteed, it's not a player option that he could potentially decline. And then you're giving yourself an extra year of Davis Bertans' bad contract. So you didn't make this move for salary reasons. It's not like this is clearing up cap space. You just got 2 players who are substantially worse than the value of Kristaps Porzingis individually. And you not only did that, you moved a 2nd-round pick. So it felt like you're pretty desperate to move Porzingis when it felt like he was fitting in now more than he ever had. So I really don't fucking get it. Like, I really, really don't. I don't know what the Mavericks are attempting to do here. Again, not a salary-saving move. Didn't improve your roster. If you're not going to make your team better, you're not going to make your team better if you're not going to make your team better now, make them better in the future. And this move doesn't do either of those 2 things. So at that point, what was the fucking point? The only feasible way that this move is justifiable is if Luka Doncic didn't want him in Dallas. I feel like that could be the reason. And I really say that because that's the only conceivable reason why this would happen. Because it seems as though the Mavericks were kind of embracing Porzingis more or less. Again, he's overpaid, but you weren't going to get much for him, as evidenced by this shit. And I don't know. It's really fucking confusing to me. The only way is if Luka seems to have a little bit of a diva streak to him. And there's all kinds of reports about how he feels about players and how he felt about Rick Carlisle, which is the reason that Rick got fired, because Luka fucking hated Rick Carlisle. So if Luka was being a diva and was like, I don't want this guy on my team anymore, and the Mavericks were like kind of rightfully, although unfortunately just kind of bending to his will, because what other choice do you have? then sure. Even then, feel like he could have got a better deal than this. At the very least, not trading your own fucking second round pick to get it done. But I can only presume that has to be the reason. And that's the only semi-justifiable reason. And if that's the case, Luka Doncic deserves some criticism. And I'm not going to blame the front office for catering to Luka, because they need to just... Unfortunately, they're in the position where they kind of have to be his bitch, because what other option do they have? That's the only way it's justifiable at all. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. Maybe a report comes out later. When Rick Carlisle was gone from the Mavericks, a lot of us were like, what the fuck was that about? And then a report came out this season that was like, hey, Luka hated that guy. It was like, oh, well, that's why that happened. Maybe that's what happens here. But we can only wait and see. Yeah, really confusing. But yeah, bye.